My name is Donna. I work night shift as a nurse. Several years ago, I adopted two hamsters because both I and they are awake at night. I had hamsters as a kid and again as a young adult, but the way I care for my hamsters now is much different than my care decades ago. When getting hamsters again, I had to relearn how to care for hamsters. I had the Habitrail as a kid. It's made of plastic, and hamsters will chew plastic and make holes and escape. Mine did. And the pan death is very shallow, so you can't build up the bedding so that they can dig and burrow. And then the hide that's in the sky tower and in the wheel, they're transparent, so they aren't really able to hide. And then the pan is less than 180 square inches, so they really don't have that much room to run around in. When I adopted hamsters again in 2000, I kept two Syrian sisters together, and I used a Grand Estate, which is similar to the Habitrail, and I thought I was giving them more space because I connected with tubing to a 10-gallon tank. However, the sisters started fighting because Syrians are not supposed to be kept together once they're past their being babies. Remember, I said adopted two hamsters? Well, meet Peaches. She's the mama, and meet Goldie, her baby. So I did my research on hamster care. For Peaches, I bought a 75-gallon tank, a KT 12-inch wheel, aspen shavings for burrowing, paper bedding for nesting, a sand bath for cleaning up, a dish for her fresh food, a dish for her lab blocks and seed mix, a wooden bridge that I put over a tunnel that disappeared into about 10 inches of bedding. And then I got a playpen for her to use outside of her enclosure. Then Goldie, she was still very little. And I thought, oh, she doesn't need a big enclosure right away. So let me put her in the setup I had back in 2000, that Grand Estates connected with tubing to a 10-gallon tank. She'll be okay in that for, at least a few weeks until she gets bigger. I was very wrong. Instead of hiding out in the little peanut hide that I put in there, she decided she was going to build her nest in the tubing. And I couldn't interact with her. She just stayed in the tubing, and she even stayed in there to pee. And the pee got stinky. Needed to get a 40-gallon tank. The next morning, I went and picked one up, and along with a 12-inch wheel, much like Peaches had. I reused the water bottle from the 10-gallon tank. I got paper bedding and aspen bedding and put it in there. I used a wooden bridge as a retaining wall for the bedding. And I took the tubing from the other enclosure because that's where she was. I also brought her food dish over and the sand bath and the little peanut hide and added that to the enclosure. In order to replace the small tubing, I bought a plastic ferret tube, which is like twice as big in diameter, and I put that in there. I also got a cork log and buried that into the bedding as a burrow starter. I bought a wooden pass-through, and then I also discovered that Goldie was too little to effectively move that big 12-inch KT silent spinner. So I bought a Night Angel 10-inch wheel, which is even more silent. Those are wonderful wheels if you can afford them. Peaches also got some upgrades during this time. She got a pass-through. She also got a ferret tube. She got some couple of cork logs and a platform. And I took a bridge and turned it sideways so I could increase the bedding. That little enclosure that I bought for a playpen turned out to be way too small. The square footage was even smaller than the 40-gallon tank size, so why would I take them out and put them in a smaller area in order to interact with them? And then the fence around them, they could climb right over. So I had another problem. Goldie started living in her ferret tube, which was okay. except then she also started chewing on her ferret tube. So I needed to find another place to put that, which turned out to be the new play area. So I found some new taller fencing, but it was still climbable, but it slowed them down. So at least if you were supervising, you could catch them before they got over the fence. And then I also bought guinea pig liner for a guinea pig cage to protect my carpet. And I took the oversized wheel that had been in Goldie's cage and put it in there. I put a wood tunnel, some chews, and I would put in food items like bird bells or seed logs that you wouldn't normally want to leave in their enclosures overnight that they could chew on and have fun and get some food. I like to use the cup method to initially get them out. I'll put a piece of food that they like and get them to climb into the cup and then get them used to the cup. And then eventually I will pick them up in the cup and then put them right back. And then eventually I can pick them up and take them to the play area. And once they get used to the idea that the cup is the way to get to the play area, then I can sit down in the play area with them and they will actually climb all over you. You can become part of the play equipment. They get used to your smell. They get used to you being a big person that isn't trying to hurt them. And I also like to sit in my oversized chair that has arms on it or on my sofa that has arms on it and let them run around on me and then just kind of block them from jumping off onto the floor. And they get used to me. And eventually, most of them will let me pick them up and they'll just climb into my hand and go, "Oh, it's time to get out. This is the way to get out." Once I had my hamsters hand tamed and I could pick them up easily, I started letting them free roam out in the living room and sometimes in the playroom outside of the playpen. So you will see in some of my pictures that they are outside running around on the carpet, not in the playpen. And they really love it. But you also have to put up barriers to keep them out of the kitchen, keep them out of the hallway so they're not running into the other bedrooms and any other little places that you don't want to get them lost in. I wanted to repeat again that hamsters are solitary animals. They are not social animals like guinea pigs, rats, and mice. They need to be kept separate. Once they're past the baby stage where they are weaned from their mother, if you do end up with an accidental pregnancy, look up the timing for separating the hamsters and make sure that you separate them by gender and then separate the girls from their mamas shortly after that, and then separate the girls from each other. They will need to be separated long before they grow to be full size. And if you have dwarf hamsters and are thinking about keeping them together, I would suggest having a backup cage just in case. And it can only be between siblings who have grown up together. You cannot introduce a strange hamster. For example, I had Peaches and Goldie out one day and we let them sniff each other. We were each holding one, and Goldie was sniffing her mom, and her mom did not like it. And she tried to bite her daughter, but she ended up biting my friend's finger instead. Another example is that when I was a kid, we bred my hamster with the classroom hamster, and we ended up with 8 babies, which were really cute. And we did separate them by gender, but when it came time to adopt them out, nobody wanted to take the babies. I thought a whole bunch of my classmates wanted to have the hamsters, and apparently their parents didn't let them. So we ended up with a bunch of hamsters getting old enough that they needed to be separated, and they started fighting with each other, and they ended up giving them each other wounds that were so bad that they ended up dying. Another example of this, and this is with a dwarf hamster, Puff, who I adopted from the local shelter. And she was in with her sisters, and one of their sisters actually bit me while I was trying to decide who to bring home. And I ended up bringing home Puff, and she had several pretty deep bites, and I treated them with antibiotics, but she still passed away 2 weeks after I brought her home. Let's talk about something more lighthearted. That is, hamsters have huge, huge pouches that go all the way down to their hips, and they love to collect and forage food. They like doing it inside their cages. They like doing it in their play area. They like doing it if you're free roaming and you leave some dishes and different things out for them to find in the room. That they will even climb into a bag if you leave it open and try and fill their pouches like Goldie did in this picture. Yes, that is Goldie in there. So hamsters are omnivores, which means that they like having veggies and meat. So you want to provide them a good seed mix and some lab blocks, which have a high quality protein to them, like Missouri or Techlad. We also give my hamsters veggies of different kinds and a little bit of fruit, not too much fruit, and sometimes give them boiled eggs or cooked meat that is not seasoned, like chicken, is one of their favorites that I like to give them. And you can also give them dried or even live worms or things like bugs like crickets. Another problem is that hamsters are escape artists. Even if you've given them a lot of time free roaming, either in a play area or even out in a room, sometimes some of them want to get out even more and they will try to get out. If they're in a wire enclosure, they'll climb up the sides and monkey bar across the roof. If they're in a tank, they'll climb up the back of their wheel. I like to keep my wheels towards the center of the tank so they're not up against the walls. They'll also climb up their water bottles, like Goldie is demonstrating here, and they can pull themselves out. She was small enough that she couldn't get out in this picture, but later on she could. And so I had to get a tank topper reptile mesh cover to keep her inside her tank. When I moved her to the 75-gallon, I had another hamster that decided to launch herself between the two tanks and ended up landing in Goldie's tank. And I had to get a top for the 75-gallon tank so that my free roaming Luna would not continue to try and jump into Goldie's tank because she did that twice. Here, Goldie is demonstrating how she can climb up the wall with her back up against a curio cabinet. I've had two other hamsters actually free scale the front of my brick fireplace. So you want to keep your eye on your hamsters when you're free roaming. Hamsters need fresh water. If you have a water dish, make sure you're changing the water daily. If you have a water bottle, make sure you're checking it daily, making sure it's not getting tipped over or it's leaking out into the bedding. Hamsters are desert animals, so they really appreciate having sand in their enclosure. Dwarf hamsters, in particular, like to do flippy flips and will use it as a sand bath. Syrian hamsters will dig around in them and also use them initially as a sand bath, but a lot of mine will use it as a toilet, which makes my job cleaning later on a lot easier. Also, make sure you have chew toys for them to chew on and different kinds of hides and platforms for them to run under. Seed sprays and forage toys are other things that hamsters enjoy. Also, you need to keep their place clean. We like to change things in they peeing in a sand bath at least once a week. If you have a smaller enclosure, you're going to end up changing everything out at least once a week. If you have an appropriate large enclosure like a 75-gallon, 40-gallon tank, you can go 1 to 3 months from doing a full clean and just do spot cleans once a week. Through research and trial and error, my hamster care has improved over the years. And I hope that if you're planning on getting hamsters sometime in the future, that you will do your research and try and provide the best possible experience for your hamsters.